Every Halloween, people whisper stories they swear aren't true until someone like me lives to tell the tale. Story 1. My
What
name
you're
is
about
Emily,
to hear
and I
isn't
don't
just
usually
a
talk
story.
about this night.
It's a warning.
Not because I've forgotten, but because I can't. Every Halloween, the memory claws its way back like it's happening all over again. I grew up in a quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind of place where people trimmed their hedges on Saturdays and waved at each other from their driveways. It was safe, ordinary, and boring, except for the Anders house. They lived directly across the street. No one knew much about them. They weren't rude, but they kept to themselves, curtains always drawn. Their house felt wrong somehow, like the kind of place that sucked in sound instead of letting it out. But every Halloween they came alive in one terrifying way. They decorated their porch with pumpkins, not just a few, dozens. Each one lit with a candle, each one carved with such precision that it looked less like art and more like suffering frozen in time. These weren't goofy, grinning jack-o'-lanterns. Their faces were twisted in silent screams, eyes wide in terror. As a kid, I hated walking past them. Sometimes I swore the carved eyes followed me. By the time I was 17, I had convinced myself it was childish imagination. I stayed home that Halloween night, skipping the parties, curled up with a book. But around 11, I noticed something strange. From my bedroom window, I could see the Anders porch. The pumpkins flickered in the dark, their faces grotesque. And as kids walked past, I swore the pumpkins shifted. Just slightly. The faces turned. Watching, I told myself I was imagining it. I closed the curtain. But curiosity gnawed at me. Near midnight, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my hoodie, slipped outside, and crossed the street. The night was cold, sharp with the smell of wet leaves and smoke from distant bonfires. My sneakers crunched against gravel as I climbed the Anders steps. That's when I realized how detailed the carvings were. Too detailed. The first pumpkin I examined had crow's feet carved into the corners of its hollow eyes, the wrinkles so precise it looked real. Another had teeth clenched inside an O-shaped scream, each molar etched individually. I leaned closer, heart hammering. These weren't cartoonish. These were portraits of fear. Then my stomach dropped. I recognized one. The pumpkin's face belonged to Mrs. Carter, a woman who'd gone missing the year before. She lived 2 blocks away. People said she ran off, but here was her likeness, carved in agony, flickering with candlelight. My breath caught in my throat. I turned to another pumpkin. This one was a boy's face. I knew him, Eddie, a kid from my school who had disappeared 3 Halloweens ago after going trick-or-treating. His carved expression was so vivid it looked like he'd been captured mid-scream. I stumbled down the line, dread filling my veins. Every pumpkin was someone who had disappeared. Neighbors, classmates, familiar faces, all frozen in fear. And then I saw it. At the far end of the porch sat a pumpkin carved with my own face. I staggered back. My features were unmistakable. The small scar on my eyebrow, the curve of my lips, even the tiny mole near my nose. My own terrified face, screaming silently, lit from within. The candle flickered and I thought, no, I swear, the mouth twitched. Like it was trying to move, my legs went weak. I was about to run when I heard a sound behind me, the creak of a door. The Anders' front door was slowly swinging open. No light came from inside, just a yawning blackness. My breath fogged the air. I heard something in that dark, breathing. Slow, deliberate, inhumanly steady, I bolted. My sneakers slapped against the pavement as I tore across the street. I didn't look back. I slammed my front door, locked it, and pressed myself against the wood, my heart trying to claw its way out of my chest. I didn't sleep. Not a second. By morning, the pumpkins were gone. Every single one. The Anders' porch sat empty, bare as if nothing had ever been there. I tried to tell my mom, but she shut me down immediately. Her face was pale, eyes full of fear. "Don't you ever go near that house again," she whispered. She wouldn't explain. She didn't need to. The next Halloween, I kept my curtains closed. I didn't dare look outside. I tried to drown out the night with music, with books, with anything. But at midnight the room grew orange with a faint glow. My chest tightened. I crept to the window and pulled the curtain open just a sliver. On our porch sat a single pumpkin, my face carved more perfectly than before. My mouth stretched wide in a scream I hadn't yet given. The candle inside flickered, steady and slow, almost like a heartbeat, and I swear it blinked. Story 2. My name is Daniel, and when I was 12, I lived in a neighborhood where every house had its own Halloween charm, except for the Miller place. Their house stood at the end of the block, a tall, weathered Victorian with chipped white paint and an attic window that always seemed to stare down at us like a watching eye. The Millers still lived there, at least the parents did. But they swore no one else stayed in the attic. That was hard to believe because every Halloween night, without fail, we saw her. A pale woman in the attic window. The first time I noticed her, I was 9, holding a pillowcase full of candy. She stood there in the dim glow, waving slowly at the children passing below. Her skin looked grayish, her dress old-fashioned, like something from another century. Most kids ignored her, or maybe pretended not to see. But I couldn't look away. Every year it was the same. She never missed a Halloween. She would stand there, still as a mannequin, hand moving in that slow, eerie wave. She never came down, never spoke, just watched. That Halloween when I was 12, curiosity got the better of me. I was with my friends, but they dared me wave back. Just once, so I did. I lifted my hand and gave her the smallest, most awkward wave, and that's when she smiled. Her lips stretched thin across her face, revealing teeth too sharp, too many. Her eyes locked on mine as she mouthed words I'll never forget. "Come upstairs." I froze. My friends laughed, thinking I was making it up. They couldn't see her expression from where they stood, but I could. And the longer I stared, the more her mouth seemed to move, repeating those words over and over. "Come upstairs." I couldn't sleep that night. I left my curtains open just enough to see the Miller house. Long after trick-or-treaters had gone, the woman was still there, hand raised, smile splitting her face. She didn't move until nearly dawn when the first light touched the glass and she seemed to melt away. The next day, I asked Mr. Miller about it. He was raking leaves in his yard. I told him I saw someone in the attic window. His face went pale, his grip tightening on the rake. He muttered something like, "Don't joke about that," and hurried inside. I should have left it alone, but I couldn't. The following Halloween, I went trick-or-treating alone. I lingered near their house, staring up at the attic window. And there she was, waiting for me. She waved. I waved back, heart thundering in my chest. She smiled wider. I don't know what came over me, but I crossed the yard. The house loomed above me, its porch groaning under my weight. The door was unlocked. Inside, the air was stale, heavy with dust and something else. Something metallic like old blood. The floorboards creaked under my sneakers as I climbed the stairs, each step colder than the last. I don't know why I didn't turn back. Curiosity? Stupidity? Maybe something was pulling me forward. By the time I reached the second floor, the house felt silent in a way that hurt my ears. And then I saw the attic door. It was slightly open. A faint light glowed inside, pulsing like a heartbeat. I pushed it wider and stepped in. The attic was lined with broken furniture, old trunks, and cobwebs thick as curtains. But in the center stood a tall mirror, its surface fogged. In the reflection, I saw her, the woman, pale as death. She was behind me, though when I spun around, no one was there. My breath clouded in the freezing air. I turned back to the mirror. She was closer now, her lips moved. "Come upstairs." And then from the mirror's depths, her hand reached out. Not glass, not reflection, her real hand, long and cold and bone white. It grazed my shoulder and I felt the sting of frostbite burn into my skin. I screamed and stumbled back, crashing into a trunk. The attic door slammed shut. Her laughter filled the room, shrill and echoing, bouncing off the walls. The mirror rippled like water. I ran. I don't remember how I forced that door open, or how my legs carried me down the stairs. I bolted out of the house and didn't stop until I reached my own front porch, lungs burning, heart breaking my ribs. The next morning, I tried to tell my parents. They didn't believe me, said I let Halloween get into my head, but I still carry the scar, a small frostbitten mark on my shoulder, shaped like skeletal fingers. Every Halloween since, I close my curtains, shut off my lights, and pray she doesn't remember me. But sometimes, when the night is quiet and the wind rattles my windows, I hear a faint knocking. And if I'm brave or stupid enough to peek through the curtains, I see her in the attic window of the Miller house, still smiling, still waving, waiting for me to come upstairs. Story 3. My name is Josh, and I grew up on a street where Halloween was sacred. Every porch was alive with orange glow, every lawn scattered with fake gravestones and skeletons. But there was one house everyone avoided, number 9. The family who lived there kept to themselves. No one ever saw them outside, not mowing the lawn, not collecting mail. Their windows were covered, their curtains thick. Except for Halloween night. That was the only time their porch light flicked on. And every year, kids whispered the same thing. If you went up to their door, you didn't come back. I never believed it. At least not until last year. I was 16, too old for trick-or-treating, but too restless to stay home. My friends dared me to go up to number 9's porch. I laughed it off at first, but when the clock struck 9, curiosity pulled me across the street. The house loomed darker than the others, its porch sagging under the weight of shadows. But there was a glow, faint, golden, beckoning. A neat line of candy bars led up the steps, placed like bait. I crouched down, picked one up, and felt the wrapper was warm. Too warm, like it had been sitting in someone's hand just seconds before. I should have left, but I followed the trail to the front door. It was open just an inch, a sliver of light spilling through. My pulse hammered in my ears as I pushed it wider. Inside, the air was heavy with a smell I couldn't place, sweet and rotten, like fruit left too long in the sun. The hallway stretched narrow, lined with hooks. From each hook hung a costume. Pirate hats, superhero masks, princess dresses. They looked like trophies. I reached out and touched one. The fabric crinkled under my fingers, but the sleeve collapsed wrong. Too stiff, too heavy. I pulled it open, and a small arm bone slipped out, clattering to the floor. My stomach turned. Every costume was still filled. Not with candy, not with stuffing, but with bones. Tiny skeletons slumped inside faded fabric, jawbones gaping as if mid-scream. The smell hit me full force then, decay masked with something sugary, like candy melted over rot. I stumbled back, bile rising in my throat. That's when I heard it, whispering, low, childlike, echoing through the hallway. The sound of dozens of voices chanting the same 2 words over and over. Trick or treat. Trick or treat. The costumes swayed on their hooks as though breathing, as though the bones inside were shifting. I turned to run, but the front door slammed shut with a crash that rattled the walls. The whispering grew louder, overlapping into a shrill chorus. The candy in my hand melted, searing hot, dripping between my fingers like wax. From the end of the hallway, something emerged. A tall figure, face hidden behind a cracked porcelain mask. It raised one bony hand and pointed at me. The chorus of voices stopped all at once, replaced by silence so complete it roared in my ears. Then the costumes began to turn, slowly, deliberately, one by one. Their skulls tilted toward me, empty sockets glowing faintly in the dark. I don't remember how I got out. I remember the front door bursting open, the night air slapping my face, my legs carrying me blindly down the street until I collapsed. When I came back with my friends, the house was dark. Empty porch, no candy trail, no open door, just silence. But I can't forget what I saw. I can't forget the smell, the bones, the way those hollow sockets all turned toward me. This Halloween, the porch light at number 9 is on again. I can see it from my window right now. And I swear, in the flicker of that glow, The costumes are swaying, waiting. Story 4. My name doesn't really matter, because after that night I don't feel like the same person anymore. I used to live in a quiet neighborhood, one of those small suburban stretches where every lawn was trimmed the same, where dogs barked at mailmen, and where the only excitement was the occasional garage sale. But every Halloween, something strange happened across the street, something nobody else seemed to talk about. It was the neighbors in the old gray house. They kept to themselves all year long. No parties, no block barbecues, not even a casual wave when you passed them by. But come Halloween night, they would all gather in their front yard, not handing out candy, not decorating with pumpkins or fake cobwebs like the rest of us. They gathered in a circle, and they hummed. At first I thought it was harmless. The humming was soft, low, almost like a choir warming up before a concert. The first year I noticed it, I stood at my window in my robe and thought, weird tradition, but fine. Except the longer they hummed, the louder it got. It was steady, one unbroken note, rising and falling together like they shared one breath. By midnight, the sound would rattle my glass and shake the picture frames on my wall. That Halloween, I told myself to ignore it. The next year it came again. The year after that too. Always the same thing, Halloween night. Right as the trick-or-treaters started to fade away, they'd step outside, form that perfect circle on the dead patch of grass in their yard, and begin their wordless song. Nobody else seemed bothered. Kids passed their house without a glance. Parents walked by as though the noise didn't exist. But me? Every year I felt the weight of that sound pressing harder against my chest, crawling inside my ears, making my teeth ache. I thought maybe I was imagining it. Maybe I was sensitive to certain frequencies, but deep down, I knew it was real. I knew they were real. Last Halloween, I decided I wouldn't let it pass again. I'd worked late, and by the time I got home, the kids had mostly gone. Candy wrappers littered the sidewalks. Jack-o'-lanterns flickered with dying candles, and the air smelled of smoke and damp leaves. Across the street, I saw them already forming their circle. 10, maybe 12 of them. Men, women, children, always the same faces, pale in the streetlight. None of them ever aged. I'd lived there for 7 years, and they looked exactly the same as the day I moved in. I locked my door, turned off my porch light, and stood at my window, arms crossed. Their hum had started. That single low tone rolled through the night like the first strike of a bell. My glass vibrated faintly against my fingertips. My heart beat too fast, too hard. I wanted to look away. I couldn't. Minute by minute, their voices rose. It was no longer just humming. It was resonant, like 100 throats singing at once, though only a dozen stood there. My walls trembled. The water in the glass on my counter rippled. My dog, usually fearless, whimpered and crawled under the couch, tail between his legs. By 11, I couldn't take it anymore. My head pounded. The sound filled every corner of my house, as though the walls themselves carried it. I stormed to the door, yanked it open, and stepped onto the porch. The night air was icy, sharp with the smell of wet earth and decaying leaves. Across the street they didn't pause, didn't even glance my way. Their circle had tightened, and at the center of it, carved into the dirt of their yard, was a hole. Long, narrow, a coffin-shaped hole. Freshly dug, my breath caught in my throat. For a moment I thought maybe it was some kind of Halloween stunt, a creepy decoration. But the soil was piled in neat mounds beside the pit. The edges were raw, sharp, still damp from the shovel. This wasn't a prop. This was a grave. And then I realized they weren't just humming anymore. Their mouths were moving. They were chanting. The syllables twisted together, guttural and low, in no language I'd ever heard. Each note seemed to drag my heartbeat with it, slower, heavier, until my chest burned from the weight. I stumbled forward without meaning to, one step down my porch. My legs shook. I shouted across the street, or tried to, but the moment the sound left my throat, it was swallowed by their chant. Like the night itself refused to carry my voice. One of them, a tall man with shoulders too broad, turned his head. He looked straight at me. His lips didn't stop moving, but his eyes locked with mine, dark, endless, pulling me in like a tide. That's when I saw it. They weren't just chanting to the hole. They were chanting for me. The circle shifted, almost imperceptibly, but enough. They left a gap facing my house. An opening, an invitation. Their voices rose, so loud now that the siding on my home rattled. So deep it made my stomach churn. My dog whimpered louder, scratching frantically at the back door, desperate to escape. I wanted to run with him. I wanted to bolt, drive until the town disappeared in my rear view. But I couldn't move. My feet were heavy, fused to the porch. The chant peaked. Their voices twisted into a shrill, piercing note that made the air throb. Then silence. Utter silence. The kind that makes your ears ring because you've forgotten what true quiet feels like. And in that silence, every single one of them turned toward me. Perfectly still, perfectly synchronized. Their faces were blank, mouths closed, but their eyes were hungry. I realized the hole wasn't waiting for someone. It was waiting for me. The tall man raised his hand and beckoned once, just once. I felt a pressure against my chest, like invisible hands shoving me forward. My toes scraped the concrete of my porch step. The world tilted, the stars blurred above me. I swore I heard soil shifting across the street as though the grave itself was impatient. Then, mercifully, a car turned the corner. Its headlights swept across the road, breaking the spell. My body snapped back and I collapsed against the railing, gasping like I'd just surfaced from deep water. When I looked up again, the car was gone. And so were they. The yard was empty. The hole had vanished, grass smooth and untouched, as though nothing had disturbed it. The streetlight flickered once, twice, then steadied. My house was still. My dog crawled from under the couch, trembling but alive. But across the street, every window of that house glowed faintly with a dull red light. And in the reflection of the glass, just for a second, I saw them standing in perfect silence, their eyes fixed on me. That was last Halloween. I haven't seen them since. But tonight is Halloween again. And already, as I sit here writing this, I can feel the walls trembling. I can hear the low hum building from across the street. Louder, closer. They're waiting for me. Story 5. My name is Daniel, and I've lived on Maplewood Lane since I was 7 years old. It's the kind of neighborhood that looks harmless on the surface, lined with oak trees, kids riding bikes, porch swings creaking in the breeze. But there's one house that everyone whispered about when we were kids. Number 14, at the very end of the cul-de-sac. That's where Mrs. Winslow lived. She was an old woman, maybe in her 70s, with a soft voice and a smile that showed too many teeth. She never came out except on Halloween. No one saw her at the grocery store, or walking her yard, or even checking her mail. But every October 31st, her porch light clicked on, and kids knew she'd be waiting. Not at the door like normal neighbors. No, she always led you inside, down into her basement, and that's where she gave out candy. My mom never let me go. She'd heard stories, called her odd, said her candy wasn't safe. But I was 12 when I finally worked up the nerve. I wanted to prove I wasn't just some scared little kid. My friends dared me, and so when Mrs. Winslow opened the door that night, I stepped forward. The air in her house smelled sweet, too sweet, like syrup and rotting fruit mixed together. She smiled when she saw me. "Well, hello there," she whispered. "First time." Her voice was gentle, almost grandmotherly, but something about the way she said it made my stomach twist. She didn't hand me a candy bar. Instead, she beckoned with one crooked finger. "Come along, dear. The best treats are downstairs." The basement door creaked open, and a wave of cold, damp air hit me. It smelled like wet stone and sugar. Each step down groaned under my sneakers. The bulb overhead flickered, casting shadows that seemed to shift when I wasn't looking. At the bottom, a long wooden table was set with glass jars, bowls, and trays. Each one overflowed with candy, brightly wrapped chocolates, gummy worms, lollipops, things I'd never even seen before. The colors glowed faintly in the dim light, as if the sweets themselves were alive. Mrs. Winslow handed me a piece. It was wrapped in shiny red foil, warm against my palm like it had just been made. I hesitated, but her eyes wouldn't let me say no. They were pale, almost white, and they shimmered with something hungry. My hand moved on its own. I unwrapped the candy and popped it into my mouth. It was perfect. Sweet but not cloying, melting across my tongue like velvet. It didn't taste like any chocolate I'd ever had. Richer, deeper, addicting. I swallowed and immediately craved another. She smiled, her teeth glinting in the low light. "Take as much as you like, dear. One taste is never enough." I filled my bag. When I left, the night air felt thin, almost tasteless after what I'd just eaten. I remember walking home with a strange warmth spreading through my chest, like the candy was still dissolving inside me. That night, I ate until my stomach hurt. I couldn't stop. Each piece was better than the last, and when I finally collapsed into bed, my teeth ached, sharp and sore. The next morning, my mom gasped when I smiled at her. She thought I'd chipped a tooth. But when I looked in the mirror, I saw it. My canines were longer, pointed, almost predatory. I told myself it was just the light. Just a trick of Halloween sugar, but it wasn't just me. At school, I noticed other kids who'd gone to Mrs. Winslow's. They were grinning too wide, their eyes too bright. Their teeth were changing. Some had jagged edges, some sharper than mine. And when we laughed the same way, too loud, too hungry. Parents started whispering. Dentists couldn't explain it. But the kids didn't complain. We liked it. We liked her candy. And every day the craving grew stronger. Weeks passed. By November, I was sneaking down to her house at night. I wasn't the only one. Sometimes I'd see shadows of other kids slipping inside, their smiles catching the moonlight. She always welcomed us, always had bowls waiting. And every time I ate, I felt myself slipping further from human. My teeth weren't the only things changing. My skin felt tighter. My reflection looked off, like my smile stretched too far, like her smile. Then one night I asked her what was in the candy. Mrs. Winslow leaned close, her breath warm and sticky on my cheek. "Why, child?" she whispered. "It's just a piece of me, a gift. Don't you like being part of my family?" I swear I saw it then. Her mouth opened wider than it should, rows of razor-sharp teeth glistening in the candlelight. Her tongue flicked out, tasting the air, and I realized with a jolt that her teeth were my teeth. Her smile was my smile. We were becoming her. That was 3 years ago. I don't know how to stop it now. I can't eat normal food. Everything tastes like ash except her candy. My parents think I'm sick, but they don't understand. I'm starving all the time unless I go back to her basement. And every Halloween, she opens that door again. More kids walk inside. More smiles sharpen. The neighborhood doesn't even question it anymore. They think it's just cavities, just bad diets. But I know the truth. I see it every time I look in the mirror. I'm not Daniel anymore. I'm one of hers. And if you're reading this, if you ever find yourself on Maplewood Lane, do yourself a favor. Don't go near number 14. Don't eat the candy. Don't look into her smile, because once you do, you'll never stop smiling. This one. Story 6. My name's Alex. I grew up on a dead-end street called Birch Hollow Lane. In the daytime, it was a safe, ordinary neighborhood. Neat houses, cracked sidewalks, maple leaves piled in gutters. But Halloween nights always felt different there. Like the air itself turned heavier. I was 15 the year it happened. Too old, I thought, to trick or treat, but not too old to roam the streets with a pillowcase and a flashlight, pretending to keep an eye on my little brother. Mostly, I just liked the way Halloween felt. Wet leaves underfoot, carved pumpkins flickering, distant laughter echoing off houses. That night started like all the others. The sky was the color of bruised steel. The street smelled of smoke and damp earth. Kids darted from door to door, their costumes crackling under plastic capes. Porch lights glowed amber. My sneakers squeaked on the pavement as I trailed behind my brother and his friends. Everything was normal, until the shadows. It began as a flicker. A scarecrow in a front yard cast its shadow the wrong way, stretching toward the street instead of toward the house. A tree's branches on Mrs. Carter's lawn seemed to sway in still air. My flashlight flickered, making the darkness throb. I told myself it was just the jack-o'-lanterns messing with my eyes. Then I saw Mr. Grant. He lived 3 doors down, a shut-in with a white beard and a permanent scowl. He almost never came outside. At night, though, he was on his porch. He wasn't handing out candy. He was just standing there watching. The porch light behind him should have thrown his shadow straight down the steps. Instead, it stretched across the street, directly toward me. I blinked. The shadow wasn't just long. It was moving. Sliding, inching across the asphalt like a slick of oil. Its fingers elongated, claw-shaped, and then Mr. Grant vanished. One blink and his porch was empty, but the shadow stayed. My skin crawled. I backed away, clutching my flashlight. The shadow raised what looked like a head, featureless but aware, and tilted it toward me. The temperature dropped. My breath puffed out in pale clouds. Somewhere far off, a dog howled. I ran. The street blurred under me, porch lights streaking past. The shadow followed, gliding, not stepping, not running, just gliding, stretching, keeping pace without sound. My sneakers slapped wet pavement. The smell of leaves and wax filled my nose. My heart beat so hard I could taste blood in the back of my throat. I cut across a yard, vaulted a fence, tore my jeans on a nail. When I landed, I heard it. A faint, papery rustle behind me, like fabric dragging over wood. I spun around. The shadow had oozed over the fence, spilling onto the grass like spilled ink. It reached for me. I bolted again. Streetlights flickered and dimmed as I passed, one by one, until the whole street seemed cloaked in a moving darkness. The sound of children laughing had stopped. Even the crickets were silent. My house finally came into view. Porch light on, curtains drawn, safety. I sprinted up the steps, yanked the door open, slammed it shut behind me, and locked it. My chest heaved. My mom called from the kitchen. "Alex, you're back early?" I couldn't answer. I was staring at the floor, because the shadow had followed me inside. It stretched across the tiles, blacker than black, its edges curling like smoke. It didn't look like me or Mr. Grant anymore. It looked like something else entirely. Something hungry. My mom stepped into the doorway. "Alex, what?" She stopped. Her eyes widened. She could see it. The shadow lunged. I grabbed the nearest thing, a ceramic lamp, and smashed it to the floor. Glass shattered, the bulb popped. For an instant, a flash of light filled the room. The shadow hissed, actually hissed, and shrank back. Then the room went dark. When the ceiling light flickered on again, my mom was gone. The shadow, too. I screamed her name until my throat burned. Checked every room. Nothing. No broken door, no footprints, no sign she'd left. Just gone like she'd been erased. No one believed me. The police thought she'd left of her own accord. Neighbors whispered about my story about stress. But I know what I saw, and it isn't over. In the weeks after, I noticed things. Streetlights dimming when I walked under them. My own shadow lagging behind by a fraction of a second. Sometimes, when I turned my head fast enough, I'd see another shape trailing just outside my vision. A longer, darker outline attached to nothing. Every Halloween since. The shadows in Birch Hollow Lane have moved. I see them from my window, stretching across lawns, pooling under doorways. They don't stay still. They creep, shift, lean toward me. Last night was the worst yet. I went outside to get the mail. It was a crisp October evening, the sky bruised purple. I stood under the streetlight, and for a moment everything seemed normal. Then I looked down. My shadow wasn't mine anymore. It was taller, leaner, its arms too long, its head cocked at an impossible angle. And it wasn't following me. It was inching closer. When I stepped back, it didn't. It just smiled, a black crease splitting its faceless head. I bolted inside and slammed the door. Now I'm sitting here writing this, and every few seconds the lamp flickers. The air feels colder, Something's moving just beyond the edge of the room. I know the shadow's here with me, waiting. And if it took my mom, it's only a matter of time before it takes me too. Story 7. My name is Ryan, and I grew up in a neighborhood where every kid knew better than to go near the old White House at the corner of Pine and Maple. It was abandoned for as long as I could remember. Boards nailed over the windows, roof sagging like tired shoulders, paint peeling in long gray strips. But what made it infamous wasn't how it looked. It was what people said they heard on cold October nights. The house breathed. Neighbors whispered that if you stood close enough, you could hear it. A long, slow inhale, rattling through broken shutters, followed by a pause that lasted too long. The exhale never came. Dogs refused to walk past it. Birds never landed on its roof. We all joked about it during the day, but at night no one laughed. It was Halloween when I decided to see for myself. I was 16, drunk on dares from my friends and tired of being called a coward. The air smelled of wet leaves and candle wax. Children's laughter floated down the street, but I ignored the groups of costumed kids. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness as I made my way to the house. That night, the door stood wide open. It wasn't just unlocked. It was yawning, as if the house itself were inviting me in. My skin prickled, but pride shoved me forward. I told myself I'd step inside, take a picture, and prove everyone wrong. The moment I crossed the threshold, the air shifted, heavy, damp. My flashlight flickered, painting warped wallpaper and a staircase that curled upward like a spine. The smell hit me then, mold, rust, and something sour like spoiled milk. I turned to leave, but the door slammed shut behind me with a crack that echoed through the walls. Then the house inhaled. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't pipes. It was deep and wet, vibrating through the floorboards beneath my shoes. The walls groaned inward, as if the entire structure had lungs. My chest tightened. My ears popped. I called out, half angry, half terrified, but my voice sounded muffled, swallowed by the air. My flashlight beam trembled across the living room. Furniture was draped in sheets that bulged and sank like something shifting underneath. The wallpaper pulsed, tiny cracks opening and closing like pores. I moved toward the staircase, each step creaking too loud, too alive. My hand skimmed the banister. It was warm. I snatched it back, heart hammering. Halfway up, I heard a whisper. At first, I thought it was the wind. But no, the words slithered clear. Stay. I spun around. Shadows shifted against the wall, long and trembling, though nothing stood there to cast them. My flashlight sputtered again. The beam died, darkness swallowed me, and then the house inhaled again, harder this time. The floor tilted. My ears rang. My skin felt like it was being pulled, stretched toward the walls. I gasped for air but couldn't fill my lungs. The house was sucking it away. I staggered into a bedroom at the top of the stairs. Moonlight spilled through a crack in the boards, faint and silver, enough to see. The bed frame leaned crooked against the wall, mattress sagging, but the sheets rose and fell with steady rhythm. Breathing. I backed away, hand on the doorknob. It was slick, damp, like sweat. Behind me, the sheets shifted. Something sat up beneath them. I bolted down the hall, footsteps echoing too loud, too many, like something was chasing just behind me. The wallpaper bulged with every inhale, plaster cracking as if the house's lungs were too big for its body. A door at the end of the hall gaped open. I sprinted through, slammed it behind me, and realized I was back in the same room. The same sagging bed, the same breathing sheets. I screamed and ran again, but every door, every hallway, every turn led me back. The house was folding me inside itself, trapping me in its lungs. Then I felt it, the pressure in my chest easing. Not because the house had stopped inhaling, but because I was breathing with it. My lungs synced to its rhythm, unwillingly at first, then naturally, like they belonged to it. My head grew light. My heartbeat slowed, steady, in time with the walls. I tried to fight it. I dug my nails into the door frame, kicked at the floorboards, screamed until my throat bled. But the air was gone. My body moved slower, weaker, until I sank to my knees, chest rising and falling in time with the house. That's when I saw the others. In the moonlight. Faint figures pressed against the wallpaper, faces, hands, torsos, distorted but human. Their mouths gaped open, sucking in air that wasn't theirs. Their eyes rolled white. The house wasn't empty. It was full. Full of everyone who had ever stepped inside and never walked out. I don't remember blacking out, but I woke up on the porch at dawn, lying in the frost, lungs burning. The door was shut. The house silent. No one believed me, of course. My friends laughed, said I'd chickened out and passed out on the steps. But I know better, because now every night I hear it. Even from my own room across the street, I hear the house inhale. Long, slow, and patient. And I know one day, it's going to need to exhale. When it does, I don't think any of us will survive it. If you enjoyed this chilling tale and want more terrifying stories, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a nightmare. Share your thoughts in the comments. Would you dare to step inside the house that breathes? And remember, every view, every click keeps the shadows alive.